Hello, hello. I allowed you to hear that horrific thing, or well, if you're into anime and stuff, I guess it wasn't horrific for you. But that is the voice of the Harekaze, or the HSF Harekaze, High School Fleet something. The guns you see here, well, let's start off by introducing the ship. This is a Kagero type ship. And it's actually quite interesting in the sense that they've made this premium with 3 different hulls. You can slot 3 different hulls and you get different types of performance out of them. The default hull is very much the basic Kagero, in fact pretty much identical to the basic Kagero hull. The B hull is replaces your guns with 100mm guns, which are basically the Akizuki guns, but you only get 3x2, so you don't get the full 8 turrets, you only get 6 turrets. And this of course enhances your anti-air as well, so you get anti-air and you get the flat arcs, but in return you get much lowered fire chance, much lowered HE penetration, and all the things that come with it. And finally there's the C hull, which is the one I'm using right now, which gives you the midway secondary guns, which are very similar to how Benson, aka USDDs, perform, or USDD guns perform. You saw the shell velocity, I just tested it out at the start there, very slow, just like USDDs. These guns have a 4-second reload, so not as quick as Benson's 3.3-second reload, but they handle and turn just as quickly, 5.3-second 180-degree turn, which means they are very fast. However, though, even though they don't reload as quickly as Benson's turrets, you also don't have that many, you only have 3. And I think they could kind of get away with increasing this turret count from 3 to 4, because having only 3 turrets on a tier 8 feels pretty anemic, especially since you tend to run into higher tier DDs as well. And well, let's just say I wouldn't want to run into a Fletcher with this thing, that sounds terrifying. You already have lower HP pool than the USDDs to begin with. My 16.1k health is with survivability expert. Now, just like with the Kagero commentary I made earlier, I am running the Torpedo reload booster since I quite enjoy running that setup. The matchmaking here is anything but friendly. I'm against pretty much only tier 10s, and they even have a midway on their side. There's also Shimakazes and all kinds of nasty stuff on their side, and a Missouri right in front of me who could radar me. But starting off, of course, Kagero's torps are quite good, and here I show you an example. Since I just made a Kagero commentary, this kind of also works into the Kagero playstyle, and I can show a thing I didn't show back then, which is stacking floods on enemy targets. Now, what I'm doing here is, you saw I torped the Missouri. I'm keeping the Shimakaze spotted here. This is of course something the Kagero can also do, which is outspot enemy DDs. So you notice I didn't shoot at him, I just kept him spotted with my spotting advantage and called target so my team could focus him. But back to the thing about my torps. I launched my full volley at this Missouri. I don't expect to hit more than 1 torp. That's the only thing I'm expecting to do. I stack them on top of each other, expecting to hit 1 torp onto this Missouri. And then I pop my reload consumable. The idea here is, and of course once I've popped my reload consumable, I instantly launch the next volley. So you see, by the time the torps hit, my next volley is already on the way. Now, US battleship repair lasts 20 seconds. The Missouri eats a torp on the nose, guaranteed flooding. He floods and he instantly repairs. Now his damage control is on cooldown. It lasts 20 seconds. So with the 30 seconds it takes for my torps to reload, well, I'm a bit closer to him now, so it probably won't even take the full 30 seconds for my next volley to arrive. Actually, it will take a bit longer, sorry. But after these 30 seconds, my next volley arrives, and I get another hit on his nose, just as I wanted. And now he has a flood, and he can't repair it because he used his flood on the first volley. So even though I just blew my torpedo consumable to just land 2 torpedoes in total, the value of these torpedoes is absolutely devastating, because I forced his repair with the first one and I've set up a permanent flood with the second one. And well, you can see what's happening to him. He's flooding and there's nothing he can do. I'm tempted to open up fire, but ultimately not really worth it, because he's going to be flooding for a long time. US battleships have a very long repair time, especially, well, I hope he's running the repair consumable. I highly always recommend running the premium repair consumable. He does pop radar here. but I spot the Shimakaze at the same time, so I open up on the Shima and I turn away because, well, I don't really want to stay here and fight. The gun alpha damage is pretty okay for these guns, and as you can see, they handle very well, so you can easily make full turns and still constantly deal damage without issues. It looks like, is that secondary spec one of them? It looks like Yamato secondaries are raining down on me. But this smoke obscures me from the enemy, so I'm quite happy to just disengage and leave them here. Shimakaze dropped torp my way, dropped torps my way, but you saw how early these torps were spotted, so I assume these are 20 km torps, since I spotted them so far away and I have plenty of time to just dodge them without any real issues. And well, I dropped torps this way, and at the same time I'm just going to disengage from this because there's not much left here for me. There's a Yamato that's running away, and as I've said multiple times, this applies to the Kagero as well as the Harekaze because, well, very similar. It applies to really any IGN type of torpedo boat, and that's chasing ships is awful. You are really bad at it. Gunboats are pretty decent at chasing because they can still deal constant damage, but you don't want to do it in IGN DDs because, well, you're trying to land torps and someone running away is just awful. Spot the Kagero, open up fire. This other Kagero didn't open up fire. This is one of those cases with IGN DDs being very hesitant to use their guns. Now someone else is spotting me. I assume it's the Shimakaze that was briefly spotting me and giving vision to this guy, so I eat a bit more damage than I expected. This guy, though, expecting torps, leaves his smoke. And it looks like the Kagero is still not opening fire, even though he's being shot at. This is the common reluctance to use your guns. Kagero drops torps my way, I manage to dodge them without too many issues, and I continue shooting him. And I do like these guns. I feel you could easily have another gun on this hull, though, I feel. I don't feel it would make it overpowered because, well, you would still lose to the Benson in both firepower and... you would still lose to the Benson in both firepower and in health. And against other Kageros, well, they still, the basic Kagero hull can still put up a really good fight in kiting away. I mean, if you turn away and just kite and shoot backwards, then of course the faster arcs and the bigger alpha of the alpha hull would more than enough make up for it. But I must say I do like this hull simply because I love responsive turrets, since they allow me to play more aggressively with the ship, especially when I run the no smoke type. I really like abusing my stealth and surprising enemy DDs in general. So the Harekaze has been, I like the approach. The idea of making a premium with 3 different hulls. The problem is that come with making 3 different hulls is of course balance, though. You kind of have to balance 3 different types of ships. And, well, making the alpha hull a direct copy is a pretty easy way of avoiding any imbalance issues. The B hull, though, the Akizuki hull, it's pretty okay. It's not as strong as the Akizuki. It doesn't have the same guns or anti-air power. I'll show off the hulls later on after this gameplay example. But ultimately, I think the balance is fairly okay on this. The only thing I'd like to see is this C hull to gain a bit more damage. They might have to nerf the fire chance a bit, because with flags and demo expert you can reach 12% fire chance per shell, which might be a bit high considering the torpedo power you have. I'm not certain how they think about that. But I think another gun would be okay, because as I said, 3 guns on this sea hull, it does feel a bit anemic. Now I can make these guns work, but that doesn't mean that it's enough. I dropped torps on the Montana, but he already changed course. However, I have used my torpedo consumable, so it should be okay. He's gonna dodge the first volley, but he's committing to a turn the other way, so I might be able to get the torps on him as he turns away. He's about to spot me, which is a bit unfortunate, 5.7, especially since he's kind of sailing towards me and I have to give turn to be able to torp him, but that's okay. He probably thinks that first volley I shot was all my torps, so him spotting me now isn't the end of the world. I was getting plain spotted regardless. Spotting, I found the Shimakaze, I found the midway even, and I found the Shimakaze on my left. And this is where you can really start, or I can really start showing off how good these guns feel, having these Benson guns. Of course, I played a ton of USDDs, that's why I really enjoy them. Well, my torps are landing on the Montana. In fact, I landed all torps, so he got completely annihilated. And this Shimakaze is, well, he is trying to fight me, but I am angling. The firing arcs are very good, unlike the Shimakaze's firing arcs, and I'm angling towards the other Shimakaze that's also opening fire on me. And well, he can only use his front guns, whereas I'm kiting and using all of the guns. And it's very easy to quickly switch target, and it's very easy to constantly change your course and make yourself hard to hit. If you look at the bottom left of my screen, you can see how sharply I'm actually angling in while still being able to use all three of my guns. And that of course makes it quite hard for the Shima to hit me. He does try to gun me down, but ultimately the constant DPS and the ability to avoid his shells while bring my own shells to bear allow me to kill the Shimakaze. He could have of course played it better, but that kind of showcased just how much you can maneuver and dodge, unlike a normal IGN-DD, because well, turret traverse limits your maneuvering a lot on the usual type. The problem here is of course the midway is coming to left click me, and there's not really much I can do except focus him and make myself a small target as possible to dodge him. His first left click hits me once, forces my repair, but my torps are up, and the one time when the planes are out of range I drop my torps, hoping that they wouldn't get spotted. Even if they do get spotted though, which they probably have gotten now, the midway is a big and clumsy ship, and he's forced to actively sail in a straight line to dodge the Shimakaze torpedoes. And well, the midway, as I said, it has more than 1 km turning circle, so he's not going to be able to dodge this regardless of what he does. I also made a quite wide spread of torpedoes, so this guy is no doubt going to eat my torps and get killed off. So what was it at the end, like 1 versus 3 versus 2 Shimas and a midway? And well, at this point we're obviously going to win this game, and there's not really much they can do about it. And looking at the score, or well, the rewards from this one, this does count as a premium, so obviously the credits you get from this are going to be highly inflated because of this. This is without, I think, running any credit flag either, so 715, 716k sounds about right for a good tier 8 premium game. The XP bonus is mostly because daily win plus running some additional flags and camo on top. Team score wise, 2.5k, pretty nice. Didn't get the Kraken, but then again, carrier and tier 10 matchmaking makes life quite hard. And looking at the detailed report, regardless of these guns, ultimately my guns didn't really do much damage. 25k damage. Most of the damage came from the torps. So at its core, the Harekaze is still a fully focused torpedo boat, just like the Kagero. That probably doesn't change, regardless of which hull you use. The fact that it has 2x5 or 2x4 torp launchers, and you can mount the reload module, and these torps hit so very hard, means that it's always going to be a torpedo boat. And ultimately what hull you pick is how you choose to support that torpedo play, instead of actually deciding your playstyle completely. Anyway, I can show off the different hulls and how they affect the ship after this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of the interesting parts about this Harekaze, let's put the default camo on just so you can see what it looks like. That's the default camo for the Harekaze. One of the things I mentioned was interesting is the ability to use these different hulls. And well, the default hull basically turns it into just a Kagero. It's almost identical in every way. The 3x2 127mm, pretty much identical to the Kagero in every single way. And then we have the B hull, or the 410 hull, which gives it the Akizuki guns and greatly improves the anti-air. But the problem is, first of all, it has no mid-range anti-air at all. No short range or mid-range, whereas the Akizuki has quite a lot. If we look at the mid-range, we have 32 DPS and 43 DPS, whereas the Harekaze, well, it has 7 DPS. That's pretty much it. And to add to it, you only have 3x2, whereas the Akizuki is 4x2. So even on the long-range guns, you start off with having 25% less AA DPS on the long-range guns. Of course, this can be multiplied and buffed and so forth, but ultimately, I would say you probably end up with something like 40% less AA DPS than the Akizuki, and that's just too much of a trade-off to ever really make it competitive against it. It's a fun build. I mean, it's an occasionally fun build. Like I've tried some what's it called, IFHE builds and stuff. Tried some IFHE messing about, but ultimately it doesn't really feel worth it, because the reason why the Akizuki is pretty strong is because it has so many guns, and well, you kind of trade off quite a lot to get this anti-air, and ultimately, well, you need IFHE to be able to fight other DDs, and really I didn't ever feel like this build was truly worth it. It's an okay build, and it makes you pretty decently competitive against other DDs. You're not gonna overwhelm them like the Akizuki does, but it's okay. It's an okay build. I think it's a nice option to be able to build these. Finally, of course, the third hull, which is the one I used in my commentary, and you only have 3 guns, which I consider a bit too little. In return, you get really good turret traverse and really good reload. But if we compare the reload, you see the reload is 4 seconds on these guns. If you compare it to the Benson, well, the Benson has 3.3 seconds with the same turret traverse. So you have 3 guns that are weaker than Benson's 5 guns. So honestly, I feel like they could easily add another turret, or maybe make the front turret a dual gun turret or something. So you still wouldn't be able to match up to the Benson's C hull. And I mean, you still wouldn't have as much HP as the Benson's C hull, or even B hull for that matter. This is with survivability expert, this health. So I think they could easily make one of the turrets a dual gun turret, maybe. I don't know if it would push the ship to become too strong. Maybe reduce the reload to 4.5 and then give it another. I don't know how they would balance it, but ultimately, or maybe just give it better accuracy. Ultimately, though, it feels like it's not quite enough. I mean, 3 guns at tier 8, even though they handle great, the fact is that it's still not much firepower at all. The one thing I have been experimenting with this build is building the captain into fire chance, demolition expert, and using smoke instead of using the torpedo reload, and seeing if I could make this fire chance work. You can see you can actually reach a 12% fire chance with demolition expert and the flags, and the idea is maybe land a torp and cause a flooding, then you burn them to death. That's something I've been experimenting with, but haven't really had too much success yet, because ultimately it's still only 3 guns. But out of all these hulls, I've been liking this 11-12 hull, aka the C hull, whatever you want to call it. I've been liking this hull the most because I like quick, responsive guns. Ultimately, though, this ship is very much like a Kagero, and mostly it feels like the difference in this setups is mostly flavor based. What you feel like the most. If you want the default Kagero experience, then you just use the default hull, which has the very basic same guns as the Kagero does. And if you like the Akizuki guns, you can mount this one. You get some AA buffs, but once again, it's not that big. It's not Akizuki level by any means. Or if you like the Benson type of guns, you can use this one. So far, it seems mostly flavor-based, and I wouldn't say any of these hulls is technically bad, because, well, it's a Kagero. You got great stealth, you got good torps, so you should be able to do quite well regardless. But none of these really seem that special, but I do like the idea of having multiple different hulls to choose from, and having the option of playing the ship the way you like to play it, which is, I think, a pretty damn good opportunity, or a damn good design in that sense. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say from the Harekaze. I mean, this is still a work in progress. We don't know how they will tune and fine-tune and change these things, but overall it's certainly not a bad ship, and if you like the Kagero, then you will probably like the Harekaze a lot as well, especially if you're a weeb, because Jesus Christ, these captains. Anyway, that was all for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it.